I'm 57 now, and I've been happily married to my wife, let's call her Lucy, for 26 years. But Lucy's not just my wife. She was my college buddy long before she became anything more. We knew each other for 10 years before getting married. We were just friends for 2 of those years, then I spent about a year courting her. The rest? Filled with love and unforgettable memories. Because of work, we had to live in separate cities for a while. That wasn't easy, but we never let the distance weaken our bond. Lucy wasn't just my partner or the mother of our kids, she was my best friend. She got me in a way no one else ever has. Which is why what she did hit me so hard. Just last week, we went to our college alumni reunion, an annual event marking 35 years since we graduated. It's a pretty big deal, with live music and even a few celebrity guests. Everyone looks forward to it. This year was special. A bunch of our old classmates made it, and it felt like a chance to reconnect and see how everyone had changed over the years. Lucy and I were excited to show up as a couple that had lasted through it all. One of the few who found love in college and actually stayed together. When we walked into that ballroom, we were glowing with pride, ready to show the world we were still rock solid. If only I'd known that night would shake the very foundation of everything I believed. The reunion started off great. So many familiar faces, so many hugs and laughs. For a while, it felt like the happiest we'd been in ages. Then someone showed up and threw it all off. We'll call him Rick. He was an old classmate of ours, one of the many who had been infatuated with Lucy back in college. She was brilliant, funny, beautiful, and yeah, guys noticed. I wasn't the only one who had a thing for her, but Rick was different. He didn't just flirt, he was relentless. Even when it was obvious Lucy wasn't interested, he kept trying. Even after Lucy and I got serious, Rick wouldn't back off. I always felt secure in our relationship, though. Rick's obsession never really got to me. I knew where Lucy stood, and I knew what we had was real. Rick eventually faded from our lives, and honestly, we figured he'd moved on. After all, it had been 35 years. So when he suddenly showed up at the reunion, it felt like a ghost stepping out of our past. And not in a good way. He greeted us like we were old friends, arms open for hugs. Lucy offered a polite handshake instead, clearly uncomfortable. And it wasn't just me who noticed. Rick couldn't stop staring at her with this weird intensity that made everyone nearby uneasy. Trying to break the tension, I asked if he'd brought his family to the event. He said he'd gotten married briefly at 40, but he was divorced now. I offered a sincere, "Sorry to hear that." But what he said next left us speechless. "You should be sorry," he said, bitterness dripping from his voice. "You stole the love of my life." Then he laughed. Loud, unhinged, totally inappropriate. Back in the day, I might have knocked a guy out for a comment like that. But now, almost 60? It just wasn't worth it. His words didn't intimidate me, but they did piss me off. Everyone in the room heard him, but nobody said a word. The awkward silence was deafening. Rick had always been that guy, the one who didn't get picked for the team, who tried too hard to be funny but never quite landed the joke. We all decided to just ignore him and move on. But Lucy didn't say a word. And the look on her face said everything. One of our closest college friends noticed that Lucy seemed shaken and gently pulled her aside. A few of us tried cheering her up, reminding her not to let someone as obsessed as Rick get under her skin. We just wanted her to enjoy the evening and not let that moment ruin things. Knowing how much Lucy tends to overthink things, we did our best to lift her spirits and bring back her smile. Out of nowhere, Rick wandered back over. Apparently, he'd been eavesdropping on our conversation. To our surprise, he apologized. He claimed he didn't mean to upset Lucy. According to him, he just wanted her to know that even after all these years, and despite how time had changed us all, she still had an admirer. I was furious at the backhanded compliment, but I bit my tongue. Calmly, I told him to leave us alone. Rick did seem genuinely sorry, and Lucy, staying firm, told him we needed space. But he wouldn't budge. He kept pleading with Lucy to forgive him so we could all enjoy what he called our final gathering. His words hit a soft spot in me. It really was the last time we'd see most of our old classmates together like this. There didn't seem to be much point in holding on to ancient grudges. Lucy must have felt something similar. She stepped forward and gave Rick a hug, not a warm, loving embrace, but more like a polite farewell. She told him to let go of the past, to leave their story where it belonged, and not to come looking for her again. Then she turned to me, and we made our way to the dance floor, hand in hand. As more people joined us, the mood brightened. The awkwardness faded. The music swelled, laughter returned, and it felt like we'd finally shaken off the weird energy. Later, I saw Lucy and our friend Nancy deep in conversation, while Rick hovered nearby, dancing in this exaggerated, goofy way that made it hard to take him seriously. It was a relief to see things lighten up, and I let myself relax for the first time that night. I kept glancing at Lucy throughout the evening, just to make sure she was okay. At one point, I saw Rick lean over and whisper something in her ear. Lucy smiled and nodded in response. That little moment reassured me. If he'd said something inappropriate, I knew Lucy would have shut it down. I figured it was harmless. So I turned my attention back to the reunion, catching up with other classmates, soaking in the nostalgia. But about an hour later, I realized something strange. Lucy and Nancy were nowhere to be found. At first, I figured they were off catching up somewhere. Everyone was mingling and bouncing between groups. But as more time passed and neither of them came back, I started to worry. I tried calling both of them, but with the loud music and all the noise, it was no surprise I didn't get through. After what felt like forever, maybe half an hour, Lucy finally came back. But something was off. She looked the same, sure. Her dress, her hair, everything was still in place. But her energy was gone. It was like someone had flipped a switch. She barely spoke and wouldn't stop nudging me to leave. Nancy returned too, but they didn't say a word to each other for the rest of the night. Not even a glance. Watching them avoid each other so awkwardly, I couldn't help but think something had happened between them. I kept asking Lucy what was wrong, why she wanted to leave so early, but she just stayed quiet. Her silence was unsettling. Even though I really wanted to stay until the end, I eventually gave in and we left. The drive home felt like it lasted forever. Lucy sat quietly the whole time, staring out the window. I asked her over and over if she was feeling okay, but she just said she was tired and needed rest. That wasn't like her. Lucy's always been full of energy, especially after a night like that. I couldn't figure out what had drained her so completely. Desperate for any clue, I asked if her mood had anything to do with Nancy. Her answer was a cold, flat no. Nothing else. No details. No elaboration. So I gave her space. Once we got home, I went about my usual routine. Online, our classmates were already posting photos and reminiscing about the reunion. But I couldn't shake this heavy feeling that maybe this was the last one Lucy and I would ever attend together. She slipped into bed quietly, pretending to be asleep. I stayed up for a while, lost in thought, and finally crawled into bed around 2 a.m. I hadn't been asleep long when Lucy suddenly shook me awake, sobbing uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she collapsed into my arms. I held her close, gently rubbing her back, whispering reassurances. I asked if the reunion had stirred up old memories and made her emotional. But she didn't say a word. Just kept crying. I didn't press. I just held her. Let her cry. Let her know I was there, even if she couldn't bring herself to talk. I let her cry it out, just held her while she unraveled in my arms. No questions, no pressure, just presence. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed by nostalgia, or maybe seeing all those old faces stirred something in her. But when her tears finally slowed and she found her voice, what she said next knocked the breath out of me. She admitted she cheated on me. With Rick. I couldn't speak. I didn't even move. My mind just shut down. I sat there frozen, like I'd been hit by a truck and couldn't quite process what just happened. Everything from that night came rushing back: the dancing, the laughter, the strange shift in her mood, the moment she and Nancy disappeared together. Suddenly, all those puzzle pieces started clicking into place. Nancy must have known. That's why she looked so wrecked when they came back. That's why Lucy insisted we leave early. Lucy, sensing the turmoil boiling inside me, kept going. She told me the whole story. She said that while they were dancing, Rick started apologizing, said he was sorry for making things awkward, especially since she turned him down so many times back in college. Then he started laying it on thick, complimenting her strength, calling her extraordinary, saying he'd never met anyone like her, not even after traveling the world. And Lucy, she let her guard down. Said the sincerity in his voice threw her off. She liked the way it felt to be seen again, not just as a wife or a mom, but as a woman. A beautiful, desired woman. She told me he asked her to take a walk, promised it would be their final goodbye, just one last conversation where he could say everything he'd always wanted to. At first, she said no. But he kept pushing, saying it would be short and that she deserved to hear his truth. Curiosity got the better of her. She went with him. They walked across the quiet campus, back through the same paths we'd taken as kids. She said Rick poured his heart out, told her how deeply he had loved her for all those years, how he never stopped seeing her as the one. Lucy admitted she'd had a few drinks and wasn't thinking clearly. She said she was swayed by the emotion of it all, the memories, the mood. And then he held her hands. That was the moment, she said, when things shifted. Her voice trembled as she described what happened next. She went into painful detail, recounting every moment they shared, right up to the second guilt slammed into her, and she pulled away. She said she realized too late what was happening, that it felt like something had snapped inside her, and all she wanted in that moment was to come home. I sat there, unable to speak. Every word she said was like a knife digging deeper. And yet, all I could do was listen. When she finished, I asked for some time to myself. Just a moment to breathe. To think. But Lucy kept crying, kept clinging to me, begging for forgiveness. I told her to rest, that we'd talk in the morning. I promised we'd figure it out, even though I had no idea what that meant. She wouldn't stop holding me. Said she was terrified I'd leave, that we'd never come back from this. Eventually, she cried herself to sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, drowning in thoughts. My brain kept rewinding, playing the entire night like a slow-motion car crash. Then something clicked. Rick's face, when Lucy came back to the party. That smug, satisfied grin. Back then, I didn't think much of it. But now, I saw it for what it was. That was the look of a man who thought he'd won. Like he finally got what he wanted after all these years. That image snapped something inside me. The hurt shifted. Turned into anger. Not just at Rick, but at Lucy. At myself. At the whole damn night. Lying there next to her felt impossible. When I was sure she was out cold, I quietly slipped out of bed. Grabbed a backpack, stuffed it with the essentials, my wallet, my laptop, some clothes. I didn't take much. I wasn't thinking long term. I just needed to breathe. Even after everything. I still loved her. 26 years. A life. A family. 1,000 memories. I couldn't imagine waking up without her. But I knew I couldn't stay. Lucy knew me too well. If I stayed, she'd find a way to pull me back in. Her words, her tears, they'd keep me rooted in place. So I left before morning came. I checked into a hotel that night, needing to put some distance between me and everything that reminded me of her. First thing I did was block her from contacting the front desk, then removed her from all my social media accounts. The weight of everything finally hit me as the sun rose, and I passed out, too drained to think anymore. By 8 a.m., my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was our kids. Neither of them knew what had happened yet. Our son is 24, and our daughter is 21, both in college, actually studying at the same campus. I hadn't even begun to think about how to break this to them. Lying there in that unfamiliar hotel bed, I realized that leaving Lucy couldn't just be an emotional reaction. It had to be a calculated decision. After what she did, pretending everything was okay was out of the question. But trying to fake it with someone who knows you better than anyone? Pointless. The truth is, I never imagined Lucy would betray me, not in a million years. So, of course, I'd never prepared myself for something like this. When the calls kept coming, I knew I had to speak to at least one of them. I chose our son. He's always been the more level-headed of the two, usually takes things in stride. With a heavy heart, I told him the truth. I said, "Your mom cheated on me last night, with someone from her past. A guy she used to know, maybe even a stalker, depending on how you look at it." I told him I needed some time to figure things out. That I didn't know what would happen next. He was stunned. Completely blindsided. He just couldn't believe that his mother, the woman who raised him, who he'd always admired, was capable of something like this. And honestly, that hurt even more. We were the model family. At least, that's what people always said. Loving parents, happy marriage, strong family bond. Our kids, our friends, even our extended family looked up to us. And in one night, all of that came crashing down. My son kept pressing for more details, desperate to understand how this happened. Why it happened. But I knew spelling it all out would just crush him further. So I told him the truth, but I held back the worst of it. I simply said Lucy confessed, and yes, it was real. He was 24. He'd had his heart broken before. But nothing prepares you for watching your parents fall apart. I made him promise to keep it to himself, for now. I wasn't ready for the rest of the world to know. Not yet. As for our daughter, I told her I was heading out of town for work, just some business stress I needed to shake off. It was a white lie, but it spared her the pain, at least temporarily. After that, the calls stopped. So here's where things stood. Our daughter believed I was away for work. Our son and Lucy both knew we were no longer under the same roof. Over the next few days, I threw myself into research. I started digging into law firms, looking for the best attorneys to help me navigate what was coming. In the middle of all that, I stumbled onto this subreddit, this place where men shared their own stories of infidelity and heartbreak. I read post after post, soaking in every word. So many of them talked about revenge, schemes, confrontations, even public humiliation. I understood their rage. Really, I did. But I couldn't see myself going down that road. Not with Lucy. Because as messed up as it sounds, I still loved her. To pretend otherwise would have been a lie. But that love wasn't enough to fix what she'd broken. The damage was too deep. The trust gone. Irrevocably. We couldn't come back from this. Not really. It was a painful truth to face, but I had to accept it. We were done. And now, everything needed my attention. Our kids, our finances, the house, the legal process. It felt overwhelming. Like I was spinning plates on a tightrope. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with a lawyer who specializes in complex separations. I'm hoping he can walk me through the maze that's now my life. Lucy and I both started out as management consultants. In our 40s, we gave up our corporate jobs. She followed her dream of becoming a writer, and I moved into startup consulting. I work independently now, mostly from home or wherever I need to be. That flexibility makes it a little easier right now. I don't have a fixed office, so if Lucy decides to come looking for me, she'll have a hard time finding where I am. And honestly, that's exactly what I need. I still work directly with clients at their offices, juggling several contracts at once, which makes it tough to completely disappear. Still, Lucy hadn't been able to track me down yet. As we edged closer to our 60s, Lucy and I had started talking seriously about retirement. We'd put in years of hard work and saved up with one shared dream in mind, a quiet beach house in the countryside. We were aiming to buy it next year and had already scouted a few spots that felt just right. Peaceful, beautiful, everything we wanted for our golden years. Now I can't help but thank God we never closed on any of those places. We were still in the negotiation phase, and that delay spared me a mountain of legal headaches. Just thinking about untangling that mess on top of everything else? It makes me shudder. Meanwhile, Lucy kept trying to reach me. Despite my silence, she didn't stop. She kept calling, sending messages. Anything to make contact. After getting legal advice, I was told it was time to officially inform our children about the separation. The lawyer also brought up the question of dividing assets. At first, I figured the fairest approach would be a straight 50-50 split. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I didn't want to punish her out of spite. That wasn't who I was. She'd earned her share of what we built together. She deserved it. And in a strange way, I believed she also deserved the freedom she'd apparently been seeking. But I knew Lucy. If I offered to split things equally, she might try to give it all up just to reconcile, to fix what she broke. So, while the divorce paperwork was being prepared, I decided it was time to sit down with the kids. I asked my son to bring my daughter to a restaurant, without telling her I'd be there. When she saw me, her face lit up, then quickly twisted in confusion and pain. She rushed over, tears already forming, and immediately started throwing questions at me. "Did you cheat on Mom? Why did you disappear like that?" Her pain cut straight through me. But I had to stay calm, for her, and for the difficult truth I was about to drop on them. I gently assured her that I hadn't been with anyone else. That I left because I needed time and space. Then I began to explain. Carefully. Slowly. My son had already heard some of it, but for my daughter, it was all new. And it shattered her. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Kept apologizing for being angry at me, for assuming the worst. She'd been living with Lucy for the past 2 weeks, completely unaware of what had really happened. And now? Her whole understanding of our family was coming apart. Through her tears, she and my son begged me, to consider giving Mom another chance. But I couldn't. I told them firmly, and gently, that my mind was made up. Watching them cry was like being gutted. But they understood. They could see how broken I was. And in that moment, they promised they'd stand by me, no matter what. I made it clear that none of this, none of what was happening, would ever change my love for them. The divorce was between me and Lucy, not them. My daughter, bless her heart, was still worried about her mom. She said Lucy hadn't been eating or sleeping. That she'd go from crying uncontrollably to pacing the house like a ghost. She'd been calling me nonstop and even showing up at my clients' offices, trying to find me. But every place she visited had told her I hadn't been in for weeks. Sensing her mother was spiraling, my daughter finally asked Lucy point blank if something had happened between us, something she needed to know about. Lucy didn't answer. She just cried harder. Couldn't speak. Couldn't even look her in the eye. It wrecked my daughter. She locked herself in her room for the rest of the day, trying to make sense of it all. Trying to grieve the version of her family she thought was real. Seeing all of this, watching how hard it hit them, I told her to stay close to her mom during the divorce. Lucy would need someone by her side. And as much as she had hurt me, I didn't want our children to lose both parents to this mess. I could see our kids starting to change. The sorrow they felt in the beginning slowly turned into something heavier, anger. It was like the betrayal had finally sunk in for them, too. They started carrying the weight of what had happened, the damage done to our family. And even though all of us were reeling, all of us hurting, it was clear that the blame for the collapse of everything we built rested on one side. Still, even with all the pain Lucy caused, I couldn't bring myself to let our kids hate her. I wouldn't allow that. No matter what, she was still their mother. And I knew she was struggling. So I encouraged them to stay by her side, to be her support while she went through this dark chapter. But then something completely unexpected happened. Rick messaged me. Yep, Rick, the guy who'd caused all this in the first place. He had the audacity to ask how Lucy was doing. Said if I was really divorcing her because of the affair, then he was ready to step in and be with her. Like he was just waiting in the wings to claim some prize. I didn't lose my temper. I didn't let him get a rise out of me. I simply told him that Lucy was free to make her own choices now. She could be with whoever she wanted, including him. Then I blocked his number. End of story. Oddly enough, his message didn't make me angry. Not really. I didn't owe that man anything, not my trust, not my energy, and certainly not my marriage. The pain didn't come from him. It came from Lucy. Because I loved her. Because I trusted her. That's what made it hurt. It wasn't about insecurity. It was the emotional fallout, the deep, soul-crushing heartbreak that came from her choosing someone else after all our years together. If she wanted to keep seeing Rick, so be it. At this point, it didn't matter. The divorce papers were being delivered that day, and I was waiting to hear from my daughter about how Lucy responded. In the meantime, I had a mountain of things to deal with: property division, retirement planning, making sure the kids were okay. I was trying to lay down some kind of foundation for what came next, even if I didn't quite know what that looked like yet. It was a brutal, exhausting stretch of time, but eventually, the paperwork was finalized. The divorce was official. When Lucy got the papers, everything she'd been hoping for, the idea that this was just some phase I'd snap out of, came crashing down. She'd been living in a fantasy where my anger was temporary, where I'd eventually come back and we'd work through it. But when she held those papers in her hands, reality set in. She started begging for a meeting, convinced she could change my mind. She wasn't wrong, honestly. If I'd seen her face to face, her words, her presence, they might have gotten to me. Lucy always had that kind of pull. But I didn't go. I couldn't. I had to choose myself this time. It tore me apart to watch her spiral, to see her break down. Because yes, I still loved her. And yes, it hurt like hell to see her like that. But I couldn't let that pain erase what she'd done. I couldn't betray my own sense of worth to comfort the person who had betrayed me. Lucy had taken me for granted. She threw away everything we had, and for what? Even though I wanted to pull her out of the hole she'd fallen into, I knew I couldn't keep living in a space that was poisoned by lies and regret. My daughter later called to tell me Lucy had been hospitalized for depression. She wasn't eating. Couldn't sleep. She cried all day, haunted by everything she'd lost. Financial stress from her decisions was piling up, too. The consequences of her actions were finally catching up with her. It was awful to hear. But it confirmed one thing: I had made the right choice. Not just for me, but for our family. Lucy refused to take her meds. Wouldn't touch supplements. Her condition declined so badly that the doctors had to switch her to a liquid diet. Some people might look at all this and call me cold. They might say, "If you really loved her, how could you leave her like this?" But unless you've lived through that kind of betrayal, unless you've had your heart ripped out by the one person you thought would never hurt you, you have no idea what that kind of pain feels like. To say I loved Lucy doesn't even scratch the surface. I loved Lucy with everything I had. I adored her. I admired her. She was the one I built my world around. Nearly 30 years together, and she wasn't just my wife, she was my partner in everything, the mother of our kids, my biggest cheerleader, and the person I believed I'd grow old with. And in a way, Rick wasn't wrong. Women like Lucy don't come around often. She had this rare blend of brilliance, creativity, empathy, and grace. Everything anyone could ever want in a partner. I did my best to cherish her, to treat her the way she deserved. But in the end, none of that seemed to matter. Because her actions didn't reflect love. Or trust. And that's why it shattered me the way it did. It wasn't insecurity that consumed me. It was the emotional wreckage she left behind. The betrayal didn't just bruise me. It tore something vital from my soul. Now, if she still wanted to be with Rick? Fine. That no longer concerned me. The divorce papers were being delivered, and I waited for my daughter's call, wondering how Lucy would take it. Meanwhile, I had real things to deal with. Things that couldn't wait: property division, finalizing retirement plans, and making sure our kids were stable and safe. All of it required careful thought. No room for emotion. Just action. Then something unexpected happened. Nancy, our longtime friend, reached out. Oddly enough, she wasn't surprised about the split. Claimed she already had a sense of what happened between me and Lucy. She started calling me regularly, trying to understand how I found out. I told her the truth. Lucy had confessed to the affair. That was all Nancy needed to hear. She apologized and said she had warned her not to be alone with Rick. But Lucy didn't listen. Then Nancy dropped something else on me, her version of the night. And it didn't match Lucy's. According to Nancy, the three of them, Lucy, Nancy, and Rick, had been dancing together when Rick started whispering things into Lucy's ear. Nothing apologetic. Nothing gentle. It was obvious flirting. Nancy tried to intervene. She said she could tell something was changing in Lucy. That she was actually starting to enjoy the attention. And that scared her. When Rick asked Lucy to take a walk, Lucy turned to Nancy, silently asking what to do. Nancy told her not to go. She made it clear Rick wasn't someone to trust. But Lucy ignored the warning. She went anyway. Nancy didn't notice at first. She got caught up talking with other friends. But when she realized Lucy had vanished, she started searching. And where did she find them? Not on a lawn, like Lucy told me. In the pool locker room. Nancy walked in and interrupted them. And from what she said, it wasn't guilt or conscience that stopped them, it was her. That part hit me hard. I'd been clinging to Lucy's confession like it meant something, that maybe she regretted it, that maybe it was just a drunken, stupid lapse. But what Nancy described, that wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice. Still, even with all of that, part of me was proud of Lucy, for owning up to what she did. For telling me, even if it wasn't the whole story. But knowing the full truth made everything sting deeper. She didn't just betray me, she lied to protect her version of the story. For a while, I asked myself the big question, could I forgive her? Could I even entertain the idea of giving her another chance? I didn't have an answer. Especially not after what Nancy told me. While I was wrestling with that, my kids kept me updated. Lucy's condition had worsened. Her depression was deepening. There were signs she was on the verge of hurting herself. Desperate, I turned to Nancy again. I told her about the earlier phone call, about the version of the story Lucy gave me, and asked if she talked to her. There was still something Lucy was hiding. And I knew Nancy was the only one who might be able to reach her. I told Nancy to be honest with her. To let her know that I now knew everything, and that I wasn't going to forgive her or try to fix what she broke. But more than anything, I needed her to check on Lucy's well-being. Because as much as I wanted to walk away clean, I couldn't let her destroy herself. Nancy agreed. She visited Lucy and later called to update me. She said Lucy had finally started to come to terms with everything. That she was beginning to recover, little by little. She had signed the divorce papers. And oddly enough, that brought me a bit of peace. After everything, I found a strange kind of motivation to get my affairs in order. Instead of settling into the quiet retirement we'd planned, I felt a different pull, like I needed to carve out a new path just for myself. So I decided to go solo. I started planning a journey, something open-ended and freeing. No fixed address, no obligations tying me down. Just a chance to see the world on my own terms and reclaim some sense of peace. The idea of escaping the weight of a permanent home actually brought me a bit of joy. It gave me hope that maybe, just maybe, my mental state could heal too. Look, I won't pretend I've handled all of this perfectly. I've stumbled more times than I'd like to admit. But I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. That's all anyone can really do in times like these. Anyway, it's been a year now. I figured I'd share how things turned out. That first stretch of time felt like it dragged on forever. After leaving our home, I lived in a hotel for a few months before renting a small apartment, while the divorce went through. I kept working, but I pivoted to clients who allowed me to work remotely full-time. It gave me a sense of control, something I badly needed as I adapted to this new life. When it came time to divide our property, I stuck to what I'd decided early on. Lucy got 50% of the retirement savings. Letting go of that money wasn't easy, but it felt like the right thing to do. A clean, fair split. As for the other half, the money that was legally mine, I chose to give it to our 2 kids. They're adults now, and I figured they could put it to better use. It felt good to help them build something for themselves, even if my own future looked a little more uncertain. Lucy, from what I hear, is still in therapy. Nancy keeps in touch with her and occasionally checks in with me, too. In one of our recent conversations, Nancy shared something that really shook me. She told me there's more to Lucy's story than I realized. Nancy's still loyal to Lucy, so I took it with a grain of caution. But I listened. Apparently, after I left, Lucy started leaning on Rick. They stayed in contact, and from what Nancy gathered, it looked like they were growing close. Maybe even falling for each other. But that didn't last. Once Rick found out that Lucy and I were actually getting divorced, once it was real, he backed off. Hard. He distanced himself. Stopped calling. Stopped visiting. Lucy, understandably, was crushed. She reminded him of everything he'd said, how much he claimed to love her. But Rick admitted the truth. He never wanted anything serious. He told her straight up that he wasn't interested in a relationship or marriage, especially not with someone as strong-willed and emotionally complex as Lucy. He just wanted something casual, nothing more. Lucy was blindsided. After everything she'd thrown away, she realized she'd built her hopes on lies. Rick had no intentions of loving her. No intentions of building anything. He admitted he was content living with a roommate, and wasn't looking for anything deeper. Worse still, he had the nerve to gloat. Told her he got what he wanted. That he'd won. It was sickening. Lucy was devastated. She'd fallen for a fantasy. A man who never respected her, never loved her, and never planned to. All he saw was a chance to stroke his ego, and he used her to do it. And then, just a couple weeks ago, I got another update. Our daughter, God bless her, had been living with Lucy, helping her through the worst of it. Supporting her while she battled depression. She stayed by her side, even when Lucy didn't deserve it, because that's the kind of heart she has. After I left our home, my daughter moved in with Lucy to help her through the worst of it. But after a year, she hit her breaking point. Lucy wasn't the same woman we used to know. Once strong and emotionally grounded, she'd become someone entirely different, fragile, filled with insecurity, constantly seeking attention, and emotionally unstable. Her behavior had become erratic, sometimes even hysterical, and it took a serious toll on everyone around her. My daughter did everything she could. But eventually, living with Lucy became unbearable. It was heartbreaking to see the contrast. The Lucy we knew, steady, supportive, full of life, was gone. Her decline was a mirror of the emotional fallout she'd brought upon herself. Her mental state worsened until she was slipping into delusion and confusion. She became controlling, obsessively calling the kids, demanding immediate responses, panicking if she didn't hear back. When my daughter tried to gently confront her about the behavior, Lucy would spiral, crying about being abandoned, terrified she'd lose them like she lost me. Our children kept assuring her they weren't going anywhere. They tried to help with her depression, they truly did. But even their patience has limits. They told her, if she kept acting this way, they'd have to reconsider how much they could be involved. Fights started happening more often. Lucy would lash out, accuse them of not being there for her when she needed them the most. This wasn't the mother they knew. Her behavior shocked them, rattled them to their core. Eventually, the tension boiled over. They had a major confrontation, telling Lucy straight up that her actions were tearing everyone apart. Our once close-knit, joyful family had splintered, and the person they held responsible was her. That was a tough pill for Lucy to swallow, realizing her own children blamed her for how things had turned out. 2 weeks ago, my daughter moved out. She called me and told me through tears that she'd done everything she could, but she couldn't put her life on hold anymore. She needed to move forward. And honestly, I supported her decision completely. She'd shown strength beyond her years. It was time for Lucy to take ownership of her choices and start rebuilding on her own. You'd think I'd feel some grim satisfaction watching my ex-wife fall apart after everything she did to me. But I didn't. There was no joy. Just sadness. Sadness for who she used to be. For who she lost. For the choices that led her down this road. I genuinely hope she finds herself again, her strength, her confidence. She wasn't always like this. Over the past year, I've been on the road a lot. Traveled to 4 different countries. It's been eye-opening, seeing new places, tasting incredible food, living with less and feeling more. At first, it hurt to think about how this wasn't the retirement I'd planned. Lucy and I had envisioned something completely different. But as time went on, I learned to be grateful for the freedom. For the chance to redefine what this chapter of life could look like. I met some amazing people along the way, folks from every corner of the globe. And I reconnected with an old passion I'd let fade, painting. Picking up a brush again felt like rediscovering a part of myself I'd forgotten. Romantically? I've stayed single. Not avoiding love, just open. Whatever happens, happens. I'm in no rush. Now, after 2.5 years of mostly quiet healing and discovery, something big finally came up. My son's getting married. A couple months before the wedding, he asked me to meet his fiancée's parents, with Lucy. It had been 4 years since we'd seen each other. At first I resisted. Suggested we all just meet at the wedding. But in the end, I knew this wasn't about me. It was about being there for my son. So I said yes. A week before the ceremony, her parents hosted a dinner. I almost backed out again, but at the last moment I showed up. It was hard seeing Lucy across the room. Emotional in ways I can't fully explain. I would have preferred to meet the in-laws alone, but this was how it had to be. And for the sake of our son, I played my part. He and his fiancée lit up when they saw me. That made it worth it. Her parents were warm, genuine people. When I met her dad, we clicked right away. We talked business, life, family. It was easy, natural. I won't get too deep into the details about the dinner with my son's in-laws. I'm guessing you're more interested in how things went with Lucy. So I'll cut to the chase. When I walked into that room, I immediately noticed something was off with her. She looked uneasy, like she wasn't sure how to carry herself. There was something different in her eyes, a weight, maybe, or a kind of guardedness I hadn't seen before. She smiled, sure, but it felt polite. Distant. Her long hair was still the same, one of the few things about her that hadn't changed. But those 4 years? They'd clearly taken a toll. More than I expected. As we sat at the table, I realized our son hadn't told his fiancée's parents much about our history. To them, it was just 2 families meeting for the first time. That bit of context caught my attention, but I didn't see any need to dwell on it. At first, Lucy stayed quiet in the group, just listening and smiling. But eventually, when we had a quick moment alone, she commented on how healthy I looked. Said I seemed full of energy. I smiled and told her it was because I'd removed all the toxic elements from my life. She wasn't expecting that. She glanced around, making sure no one had overheard. Then, carefully, she asked if I was seeing anyone. I dodged the question. Told her it wasn't something she needed to worry about. I tried not to focus on her too much after that. I stayed engaged with the other guests, keeping things light and friendly. When the evening came to an end, I hugged everyone goodbye. But when it came to Lucy, I just gave her a nod and told her to take care of herself. That caught her off guard. She stood up quickly, almost like she wanted to say something. But I'd already moved on. Honestly, the whole thing was pretty uneventful. She seemed startled, maybe even overwhelmed, but I didn't feel the need to push for more. Whatever she was feeling wasn't my burden to carry anymore. As I was walking out, my son came with me and asked if I'd like to stay at his place for a few days. It was a kind offer, but I gently declined. Promised I'd call him soon. Then I headed back to my hotel. These days, I don't have a fixed address. I live on the move. After 26 years of having a family, a home, and a routine, it wasn't easy to shift into this new, nomadic lifestyle. But over time, I adjusted. And now? I've come to love the freedom. There's one more piece of news I want to share. 2 years ago, during a trip to Tokyo, I met someone, Ashlyn. She's 52 and had just gotten out of an abusive relationship. Like me, she was on her first real solo journey. We met while climbing a mountain. No expectations, no pressure. Just two people crossing paths at the right moment. At the time, neither of us was looking for romance. So we just became friends. Real friends. After Tokyo, I was headed to South Korea. She was planning to explore Thailand. But we kept in touch. Month after month, our friendship grew stronger. Eventually, we decided to plan some of our adventures together. Over the past year and a half, we've traveled to more than 8 countries. Always as partners, not rushing into labels. For the first 2 months, we kept it strictly platonic, by choice. We wanted to really understand each other, to explore both the world and this new chapter of life together. My kids know about Ashlyn. They've met her. But they've chosen not to tell Lucy, worried it might trigger another depressive episode. When I got back to my hotel that night, I called my son. I wanted him to know why I hadn't stayed with him. I needed space. And more importantly, I wanted him to understand that I was okay. Really okay. I told my son that Ashlyn had come with me on this trip, and it wouldn't feel right to leave her behind. More than that, I wanted her at the wedding, not just as a guest, but as my partner. Naturally, my son was a bit hesitant. He liked Ashlyn, but he worried about how Lucy might react. Still, I stood firm. Ashlyn had become a part of my life, and if she was going to be around for the long haul, she deserved to be part of our family moments too. I suggested he talk it over with his sisters so we could all be on the same page. Thankfully, my daughter backed me up. She agreed Ashlyn should be there and get to know everyone. With just a week before the wedding, Ashlyn and I spent our days exploring the city. It was her first time in Kentucky, and I wanted to make it special for her. We made new memories together, me finally at peace, and her getting a taste of the place that had once been my home. Then came the wedding day. As soon as we stepped into the venue, I felt it, Lucy's eyes on us. Her stare was sharp, almost like she was trying to read something between Ashlyn and me. And when she saw us walk in hand, her whole demeanor changed. I had prepared Ashlyn ahead of time. Told her there was a chance Lucy might make a scene. Ashlyn, calm and composed as ever, simply smiled and said she could handle whatever came our way. Still, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Lucy came straight at us, her pace quick and determined. She reached out, grabbed my wrist tightly, and tried to pull me aside. I stood my ground and told her firmly, I wasn't interested in having a private conversation. She looked me straight in the eye and demanded answers. Asked if Ashlyn was my girlfriend. If I planned on marrying her. I answered just as directly, that's none of your business. Guests were starting to notice. The music, the laughter, all of it started fading into the background as Lucy's voice got louder, tears in her eyes and anger in her voice. I asked her to stop. Told her this wasn't the time or place. My daughter stepped in, trying to calm her mother down, but Lucy wouldn't listen. She kept pushing, kept trying to reclaim some control. That's when something unexpected happened. My daughter, usually so soft-spoken, snapped. With a calm but fierce tone, she gave her mother a reality check that had clearly been building for years. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just laid it all out there. She reminded Lucy that this was supposed to be a family celebration. That they were meant to walk into that hall together, proud and united. But Lucy had thrown that away years ago when she chose someone else. When she chose betrayal. And now, here she was, trying to ruin someone else's joy because she couldn't handle the consequences of her own choices. Then my daughter gave her 2 options, either accept the situation and be respectful, or she would personally make sure Lucy left the venue before the ceremony even began. Her words were like stone. Final. No room for negotiation. At first, I stepped in, ready to protect my daughter. But I quickly realized she didn't need it. She had this. With unwavering strength, she pointed right at Lucy and said everything I couldn't bring myself to say. And I'll never forget the way Lucy's grip tightened on my wrist in that moment, as if she knew she was losing the last bit of control she had left. I felt the tension rising in Lucy's grip, then suddenly, she let go. Our eyes met, and in that fleeting second I saw it all on her face, the anger, the heartbreak, the disbelief. Her whole expression trembled with it. She didn't say a word. Just turned around and walked away, without even glancing at Ashlyn. To my surprise and deep relief, my daughter stepped up immediately. She went over to Ashlyn, apologized for her mother's behavior, and wrapped her in a warm hug. Ashlyn embraced both of us in return. I looked at my daughter, this incredible young woman, and told her how proud I was of her strength. I called her my soldier. The moment I said it, I saw the emotion welling up in her eyes. Lucy had hurt a lot of people over the years, but she still expected comfort and understanding from the same small circle of friends. The truth was, over time, my kids lost the sense of what home meant, especially around holidays or big life events. And I carry part of the blame for that. I own it. As the wedding carried on, Lucy pulled further and further away. She lingered at the edges, standing alone, sometimes sitting off to the side, a shadow of what a groom's mother should be on a day like that. She didn't even join us for the family photo. That absence said more than words ever could. A few days after the wedding, I got a call from Nancy. She told me Lucy was bitter about how I seemed to be moving forward while she stayed stuck. I told Nancy the truth. Me and the kids had simply reached our limit. The drama, the manipulation, it had worn us thin. Lucy was on her own path now, and we wished her peace, but we weren't going to sacrifice ourselves to keep propping her up. I've shifted my focus. I want peace in my life. I'm even thinking of settling somewhere near my kids, making sure that when they need a gathering place, especially as they start their own families, I can be that for them. A steady hand? A safe space. A home. And if grandkids are part of that future? Even better. Whether Ashlyn joins me in that journey or not, I'll be ready. Then, a few days ago, Nancy called again. Lucy was in bad shape, panic attacks, irrational behavior, unable to care for herself. Nancy tried to stay with her, but with my daughter away and Nancy unable to stay long-term, Lucy ended up alone in the house. Then came the call that shattered us. In a state of severe mental distress, Lucy ran out into the road. A motorcyclist couldn't stop in time. She was hit. Killed on impact. The woman I'd loved for most of my life, the mother of my children, was gone, just like that. It's hard to even talk about it. Her body was so badly injured, it barely seemed real. Like a porcelain doll shattered into pieces. I'd be lying if I said I didn't wrestle with guilt. Did bringing Ashlyn to the wedding push her over the edge? Maybe. But we couldn't keep living under Lucy's emotional control forever. Her downfall didn't begin that day, it began with her betrayal. And no one forced her to walk that path. She chose it.